Coming
now,
up
I often
next.
say, and I want to say to you rather, that I don't believe that everybody is marriage material. You have a right to your opinion, but that's mine. I don't think that everybody should be married. However, for those who want to be and are willing to allow God to help them, then I become your cheerleader. That's my role. It's not to convince you of how to do it. It's not to tell you that you ought to do it. But if you choose to be married and to have the kind of marriage that God says we can have, He did promise us abundant life, you know. So that I feel like if I go after those things that God said I can have, that He will give me the resources that it takes to have that. So today, I thought that we would begin by talking about the advantages of marriage. I know that many people don't think that marriage matters. You know, a lot of us as humankind have decided that we don't have to get married, we can live together, you know, that it's not really even important that we get the paper. I hear that said a lot. But I call cohabiting counterfeit marriage, you know, and I don't know if I can have a real Gucci, if I can have real gold, then do I really want to settle for counterfeit? Even as it comes to my money, you know, do I want real money or do I want counterfeit money? Well, I'm convinced that if we do it God's way, and there really is a way that only He can provide. He is the originator of marriage, and therefore He can give us what we need in order to accomplish that kind of life that He said we could have. Okay, so let's begin then by talking about what the scripture says. In Malachi, the 2nd chapter, starting at verse 14, it says this: "Why has God abandoned us, you cry? I'll tell you why. It is because the Lord has seen your treachery in divorcing your wives who have been faithful to you through the years, the companions you promised to care for and to keep. You were united to your wife by the Lord. In God's wise plan, when you were married, the two of you became one person in His sight. And what does He want? Godly children from your union." I'm Mama E, and I have been sent to help you navigate through some of life's challenges. You know, years ago I had gone through some things in my marriage, and I found that there was a real need to just have somebody to talk to. That's the advantage of having a mom. And because I've experienced some things, my goal, my hope, is to reach back and pull my children's generation and my grandchildren's generation and say to them, come on, you can make it. If I can warn you about the pitfalls that are ahead, I can maybe help you get around them so that you don't have to go through the same hurt and the same pain. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you. I'm looking forward to you getting to know me, and that's the purpose of this telecast, Ask Mama E. Hi, everybody. I am Mama E. You know, this is a name that was affectionately given to me several years ago by some of the young adults who were my coworkers. I learned from that association with the millennials that there's a need for older, wiser women to share their experiences. You notice that I said older and wiser, not just older. Titus 2 implicitly instructs seasoned women to teach the younger women how to love their husbands and their children. So many times, individuals of my generation, we hesitate to really talk to younger people because we think we won't be heard. So many times we think that younger people don't want to hear what we have to say. I don't know. I think perhaps it might depend on how we approach them. But I learned through my association with the millennials that sometimes they're looking for answers to some of those problems that they've had, and many times they talk to each other, but talking to each other only means that we share in our inability to fix the problem anyway. And you might just want to hear from someone who has experienced life and would not be hesitant to share with you how we made it over. So it was based on those conversations that I used to have with my young adult coworkers that they started calling me Mama E. Now, I'll admit that at first I was a little bit maybe offended because I thought in the work environment that we would want to be called Mrs. So-and-so or even Miss E, but it went from Mrs. E, Mrs. Dell to Mama E. And I realized that what they were really saying was that they just wanted to have somebody in their lives that they could share their problems with, if you will, and who would be willing to be honest and transparent enough to say to them, oh yes, I experienced that and this is what I did. So it was on the basis of those conversations that our ministry was formed. In Him Marriage and Family Ministries is a multifaceted, not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to strengthen the family unit by building strong relationships, by fostering wholesome self-esteem, and by encouraging healthy lifestyles. You know, at the time that this ministry was founded, the divorce rate in my hometown was over 72%. And I remember being so depressed and burdened, if you will, about the divorce rate. And I couldn't imagine why somebody didn't fix it. You know, I thought we've got churches on every corner. Doesn't anybody realize the hurt and the pain that our community is experiencing because of the breakup of the family? And I can remember talking to leaders and pastors around town saying, what do you do? What do you have marriage ministry in your church, etc. And it was as though I kept asking God to fix it, and I finally realized that I think He was saying, you fix it. Now, you know, on the surface, you would think, well, Lord, I'm not equipped. You know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to say it. But I am convinced now that God requires His children, us, the believers, to be His hands and His feet in the earth. That He doesn't come down from heaven and fix the problems. He relies on His children, His kids, to do what we're equipped and empowered to do. I know what you're thinking. I just can't. I don't know what to say. And at the time, I didn't know what a 501c3 was all about. I didn't know how to even begin. But I am convinced now, this experience has taught me that if you be willing and obedient, that the things that you need in order to accomplish God's will and His purpose for your life, He will make sure that all of those things are taken care of. This telecast then will address some of the subjects that we are confronted with, particularly as it relates to marriage and relationships. Now, I often say, and I want to say to you rather, that I don't believe that everybody is marriage material. You have a right to your opinion, but that's mine. I don't think that everybody should be married. However, for those who want to be and are willing to allow God to help them, then I become your cheerleader. That's my role. It's not to convince you of how to do it. It's not to tell you that you ought to do it. But if you choose to be married and to have the kind of marriage that God says we can have, He did promise us abundant life, you know. So that I feel like if I go after those things that God said I can have, that He will give me the resources that it takes to have that. So today, I thought that we would begin by talking about the advantages of marriage. I know that many people don't think that marriage matters. You know, a lot of us as humankind have decided that we don't have to get married. We can live together, you know, that it's not really even important that we get the paper. I hear that said a lot. But I call cohabiting counterfeit marriage, you know, and I don't know if I can have a real Gucci, if I can have real gold, then do I really want to settle for counterfeit? Even as it comes to my money, you know, do I want real money or do I want counterfeit money? Well, I'm convinced that if we do it God's way, and there really is a way that only He can provide. He is the originator of marriage, and therefore He can give us what we need in order to accomplish that kind of life that He said we could have. Okay, so let's begin then by talking about what the scripture says. In Malachi, the 2nd chapter, starting at verse 14, it says this: "Why has God abandoned us, you cry? I'll tell you why. It is because the Lord has seen your treachery in divorcing your wives who have been faithful to you through the years, the companions you promised to care for and to keep. You were united to your wife by the Lord. In God's wise plan, when you were married, the two of you became one person in His sight. And what does He want? Godly children from your union. Therefore, guard your passions. Keep faith with the wife of your youth. For the Lord, the God of Israel, says He hates divorce and cruel men. Therefore, control your passions. Let there be no divorcing of your wives." Do you know, when I first heard that scripture, I had never heard it before, and I thought, that's odd. I've been in church the greater portion of my life, been in all of the auxiliaries of the church, and I had never heard any reference to God caring one way or the other about divorce. Now, I want to make sure that we understand that even though God hates divorce, it doesn't say that He hates divorcees. Life happens, and there are many times when we have to go back and say, God, help me get it right. But in the meantime, if I know that His ultimate will is that we have marriages made in heaven, if I know that He desires that we live together in peace and in harmony and raise godly children so that He can perpetually keep the ministry going, that His plan then is that we would have godly homes. And He is the one that will help us if we desire to please Him. I know you think it doesn't matter, and there's so many people who agree with you, but I am convinced that based on the Word and overwhelming evidence, scientific evidence as a matter of fact, that says marriage does matter. There are some things that happen in our lives when the two of us have come together. All right? We're going to stop just briefly and let a word from our sponsor come now. And then after that, I'll be back to share some additional information with you.
Ask Mama E is on the web at www.ask-mama-e.org. Hopefully you're enjoying Ask Mama E Show. If you would like more relationship tips or to get more information on programming information for this particular show, maybe you need tips on a better relationship or information about guests that appears on this show, please go to our website at www.ask-mama-e.org. Remember, Mama E is listener support. You can support this broadcast by going to Cash App, Sakis, and giving a donation today.
All right, so I'm back. And very often I try to be careful about how I project, how, you know, whether diction is correct. I had a mom and a dad who were just so strict about us being correct in how we presented ourselves. So I want to make sure, though, that I leave you with the thoughts that I believe God has given me. And I want to make sure that I say what He tells me to say in a way that you can relate to. Let me go back to the scriptures that I promised to give you about what God says about marriage. You know, we can have our opinions all we want to. I heard someone say your opinion is worth the cost of a cup of coffee, and all of us have one. So it's not really about your opinion if your opinion doesn't match what the originator, the author of marriage, has set forth. So I want to share some more scriptures from the Word, and I use different versions of the scripture just so that you're clear on what it is that the scriptures say. Let me move quickly. Isaiah 32:18, and I've used this scripture for years. When I would put my key in the door, I would quote Isaiah 32:18. Let me read it to you, and then you'll understand the significance of this scripture in my life. Isaiah 32:18, my people will dwell in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. I see that it's God's will for our homes. You know, when I turn that key, I walk into what is supposed to be peace. I would say to my children, no matter what you faced today at school, no matter what happened in the classroom, on the way home from school, when you get home, you may rest assured that you walk into a house of peace. And that came from that scripture. Maybe I can encourage you that as you enter your house, you decree and declare that I will live in a house of peace. I'm not going to live with strife and bitterness and anger and wrath. Much of what we're seeing in today's homes, that's not the will of God for our lives. So write it down if you have to. Isaiah 32:18, and my people, that's you, that's me, will live in a peaceable habitation, in sure dwellings, and in quiet resting places. That's enough right there to let you understand what God's plan is for our homes. You know, I often think that we buy houses, but God is the one who can make that house a home. You know, He tells us that He doesn't want us to be nagging women, that it's better to be on the rooftop than in the house with a nagging woman. What a horrible thing. And sometimes we have to identify ourselves as being a nagging woman, and who wants to dwell in the house with a nagging woman? That was a sidebar, so let me get back to what I believe I'm supposed to say today. Proverbs 18:22, and you'll hear this scripture a lot. I know that I've heard it for years. Proverbs 18:22 says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Well, so if I find a wife, and you notice he didn't say he that finds a woman. So apparently you can find a woman who doesn't have to be a wife, okay? Just a sidebar. But he says, if you find a wife, you find a good thing. But you notice that there's a B clause to that scripture. I used to hear it, and it would always be a period there, I thought. That man that finds a wife finds a good thing, period. No, semicolon, and obtains favor from the Lord. Well now, if he says, if you find a wife, you find a good thing and favor. Favor comes along with the wife. So what happens if you leave the wife? Does that mean that you also left your favor? I don't know. But it would seem that since they are tied together, that we might want to make sure we keep them together. So then find your good thing and also receive favor from the Lord. Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they will have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. You know, when you think about what the Lord might have intended for us to get from this scripture, is that there is an advantage to two being together. Now, of course, in another passage of scripture, it says that how can we walk together if we don't agree? So there needs to be agreement in this twosome, you know, so that he says there's some advantages. If the two of us come together and one of us fall, we'll have somebody there to help us up. It says if we're caught in the cold, you know, you see movies sometime in the winter and a person's gotten stranded out. If there are two of us, our bodies can keep each other warm. So that wasn't just the producer in Hollywood's idea for a Hallmark movie. That was God's idea. That two of us, if we come together, we can warm each other up. And lastly, he says, a threefold cord is not easily broken. What is a threefold cord? It says to me that we're going to introduce another body. So we've got the husband, and we have the wife, and then there's a threefold cord. You know, women who braid, you divide the hair into three parts so that it will stay together. If you do two parts, it will come apart. But when you've got the three cords, that's the husband, the wife, and in the middle of this relationship, if we'll put God there, that cord is not easily broken. Now, that does not indicate that the devil won't try. That is his job, you know. I know that, you know, most of us know that the thief, who is the devil, Satan, whatever name you choose to call him, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. You know, I don't think he really comes to take your house. I don't know that he needs your house, but he comes to steal your joy and to take your peace and to rob you of your influence. You know, if you and your family become just another statistic, who will actually benefit from that? The enemy knows that if he can destroy, especially two believers, if he can make you fall out and act ugly and get divorced and remarried and re-divorced and remarried, the enemy then knows that he has stolen the influence that you would have had over the lives of other people. You do realize as a believer that we are a city set on a hill. I often say to people, regardless as to what you're doing on the hill, people see you. So if you're ugly, acting ugly on the hill, they'll see that too. So then what kind of PR person are you acting like or becoming for this God that you brag about? What witness can you give to others about the God who brought you together in the first place? So I only say, search the scriptures. You know, I didn't make this up. This is not the Bible according to Mama E. It was written long before I got here, and it was written for our learning, you know, so that if you will identify that the plan of God for your life does not include strife and anger and all of the things that go into misrepresenting the God that we talk about. We'll talk a little bit more on our next telecast about some of the scientific evidence that has been given. There's a book that I read quite a while ago called The Case for Marriage, and if you get a chance to look it up, there is much evidence about the advantage of being married. If you will plan to be with us again next time, I look forward to sharing all of the information that God has given me. And hopefully, you know, as time goes on, we'll share this experience with other guests who will come on to share with us. But recognize the importance of what God plans in our lives. When it comes to our marriages and our relationship, for those persons who are not married yet, we can get prepared now for when God brings those persons in our lives. I'll look to share with you again real soon. This is Mama E. So we've come to the end of another telecast, My hope and my prayer is that something was said today that will give you encouragement. I know you were thinking that nobody understood. Certainly, I don't even know you. And you're thinking, how did she know? Well, it's because I've experienced much of what you're going through. Won't you plan to join me every week at the same time as we work our way through some of those issues that have really been giving you trouble? Believe me, you're going to be okay. Just believe. You can I make a promise to you that it's going to be okay. Just ask Mama E.
This broadcast has been provided to you by In Him Marriage and Family Ministry. Remember, this broadcast is listener supported. Your financial assistance would be greatly appreciated. You can give immediately by Cash App Sakis, or you can feel free to go to our website at www.ask-mama-e.org. You may reach us by telephone at 904-402-0086. You may write us or mail gifts of support to Ask Mama E. In Him Marriage and Family Ministry, Inc., P.O. Box 43255, Jacksonville, Florida 32203.
Here is a sneak
The second
preview.
issue said that married people live longer and healthier lives. And I think there's probably some truth to that. You know, that my husband won't go to the doctor unless I bug him about it, you know. And perhaps it is that simple little fact that another person who cares about you might convince you to go to the eye doctor, go to the dentist, check on such and such, because they're in the house with you and they see the differences, okay? The next thing it said that marriage was good for your kids' life. Children lead healthier, longer lives if parents get and stay married. Now, let me also put a little pin there. We're not suggesting that children do better in a violent situation or in a situation where there is no love, okay? So we're not, in all information, don't you think, you know, we're going to be temperate. That's what the scripture says, be moderate. So don't go too far to the left or to the right, just giving you some information for you to think about. The next one caught my interest, and it said you'll earn more money. Men today tend to think of marriage as a consumption item, as if it is a financial burden. But married men make, by some estimates, as much as 40% more money than comparative single men. Just saying. All right, number 6, that typically married people become richer because married people not only make more money, but they manage their money better and build more wealth. Number 5, another reason that marriage is good, the information says that marriage increases sexual fidelity. In other words, married people, according to this, don't cheat as much as single people, boyfriend, girlfriend. All right. You won't go bonkers? And simply that says that marriage is good for your mental health. Married men and women are less depressed, less anxious, and less psychologically distressed than single, divorced, or widowed people. Number 3, marriage is good because it will make you happy.